welcome to week 41. Only this week and next week are the last 2 weeks of our entire beginner piano proficiency series. So we've almost made it. We'll get started today with our rhythm warm-up, 16th note syncopation. We'll continue our contrary motion gold standard scales with E major, E harmonic minor, A major, and A harmonic minor. And then we will be completing our ragtime journey today with the 4/4 rag. That's the D section. And so we will check that out as soon as we finish heading over to the drum and getting rhythmically warmed up. Let's begin with line 1. We'll have our metronome set at 40 BPM, and the metronome clicks are going to represent the E's. All right, so here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top one hands together. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fantastic. Let's move on to line 2. We'll move the metronome up to 45 BPM, and now the clicks will represent all of the uhs. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving right along, we will speed up to 50 BPM while we put the metronome on halftime. So it's going to be at 25, we'll be at 50, and now the metronome clicks are going to represent the first and the third E. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Moving on to line 4, we will speed the metronome up to 30 BPM, which means we'll be at 60 BPM. And now each click of the metronome will represent the second and the fourth 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. Switch hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Top line. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Excellent. Now that we're all warmed up, let's head back to the piano. And this week, I will remember to record a segue into our gold standard contrary motion scales. Here we have our final fourth quarter of the rag, the 4-quarter rag, the D section. All right, so we are still modulated. We had modulated in the 3-quarter rag to the key of B flat minor, and now we are going to be in the relative major of that, which is D flat major, which is a perfect fourth away from where we started this rag in A flat, and that's very common to do in ragtime. Again, this is going to be an 8 by 8 measure piece, right? We have 16 bars total made up of 2 groups of 8. And in each of those groups, the first 4 measures of each phrase will be the same, and the second 4 measures will be a little bit different. Let's take a look at these harmonies. So again, nothing fancy is going to be happening here. We're just going to have our D flat, which is our 1. Now there is an embellishment chord happening to this 1, all right? And we'll talk about that in just a moment when we talk about the actual ragtime techniques that we're looking at. But for all intents and purposes, if you especially just look at the left hand, you'll notice that the chord being played is our 1 chord, our D flat. There is an embellishing chord being thrown in there, and we will address that in just a moment. Now we're going to go to the 5 of the 5, which is going to be an E flat 7, and in this case that's the 5 of the 5. And of course that will lead us to our 5, 7, which is A flat in this key. And as it should, as all good 5, 7 should do, it should lead us back to our D flat. Again, it's going to be having one of those embellishing sounds, but we'll talk about that very soon. And the pattern repeats. So we're going to have our E flat 7, which is in this case is the 5 of the 5. And then that will actually extend a little bit further, okay? So from that 5 of the 5, we will actually get to an entire measure of A flat 7. And this is actually going to allude back to the very beginning of the piece. It doesn't always happen in the D section. The D section of a ragtime piece is allowed to be completely independent of the previous sections, although there is some kind of composer spirit that has to link it all together, right? Some sort of character of the rag. But you don't always see ideas returning from the A section all the way in the D section. It does happen, and it does happen here too in this rag, where we have one idea, and then if you remember, we did this between the 5 and the 5/7 in the key of A flat. Now we're doing it between the 5/7 and the sharp 5/7 in the key of D flat. Okay, so we have an idea played in the key of A flat 7, which is our 5. Then we go up a half step to the sharp 5, A flat, or just regular A7. And then, of course, we've got a little lick that is going to bring us back to our 5. All right, so, you know, this is more of just a little cliche melody material right here. So we're really going to label the 5 over here and let this melody speak for itself as it guides our ears to hit that 5 and bring us back to our 1 chord right here. Moving right along, of course, we don't need to even analyze this section because it is going to be exactly the same as this section. And so what we do want to do is we want to go ahead and check out the harmonies for the very ending of the piece. All right, so this is a very cliche progression that I wrote here. It is a very, very resolute progression, and it really conveys this is an ending. And so, like I said, in this ragtime, I'm trying to prove that we don't need to reinvent the wheel to make a good sounding piece. You can use a lot of basic but trustworthy mechanisms to make a good ragtime piece. And so for this progression, we're going to see start on our D flat, which is our 1. Then the D flat, we're going to have a bass line that is walking downwards. So we can see that we're going to start on that B natural, which is going to turn our D flat into a D flat 7, which means that is going to be the 5 of the 4. All right, I'm going to scoot all this over just a little bit. So our D flat kind of transforms at this point into the 5 of the 4. We've seen that happen before. It's very normal for the D flat chord to be in a different role. Normally it's going to be in the role of the 1, but when you add a disguise to it, which would be that B natural, that flat 7, it becomes a D flat dominant 7, sounds a little crunchier, and instead is going to lead our ear to the G flat, which is the 4. Now, of course, it wouldn't be one of my own compositions if it didn't have a flat 4 in there, or a minor 4. And so as we can see with the B double flat, that's going to give us our minor 4 sound. Then this is going to bring us to a D flat over the A flat, okay? It's the 1 chord, but it has the 5 in the bass, so it's not quite wrapped up. Next, we're going to go to our E flat 7 chord. So this is our little surprise chord, okay? I definitely wanted to throw in a little something because it is a pretty cliche progression when you walk down from the D flat to the B natural to the B flat to the B double flat to the 5, right? We actually kept going from that 5 down to the 5 of the 5, all right? And this is cool. What we did here is we did land on our 5/7, but it's a very altered sound. It's a very altered type of 5/7, and in fact, it ties into the mystery chord that we were talking about here, 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 and here, all right? The mystery chord that we're using to embellish those 1s is a very altered A flat 7 chord, and in fact we use that because it's kind of the signature of this section. We use that to actually wrap the entire piece up. So these are going to be our mystery 5/7 chord, and what we're going to call that is the A flat 7. It's also going to have the flat 9 in it, and it's going to have the sharp 5. Okay, now we have talked about these extensions, right? Those are just altered tones that include the tones of our A flat 7 chord. So in this case, we would have a G flat, we would have an A natural, which is the flat 9. We would have our C, which is our 3rd, and then we would have an E natural, which is going to be that sharp 5. And as you'll hear, that resolves very nicely back down to our 1. flat. There's our 1. And of course, in our first repeat, we do jump back down to the 5 in this area in order to lead us back up to the repeat, or in this case, we just head back down to the 1, and of course that natural sign shouldn't be there, so it will be fixed by the time these are uploaded to the show notes, but this is just going to be our regular 1 chord right here. And the piece is over. That's it, okay? Now let's go ahead and talk about the ragtime techniques that are going on here, and we'll actually start by talking about just reiterating one more time what we just talked about down here with the A flat 7, with the flat 9 and the sharp 5. What we have is our D flat chord being played here and here, and you see that a lot, okay? It does have an added B flat in it, just to add a little bit of color, but it is essentially our D flat chord. And what we're doing is we are adding this extremely altered chord, which is adding a lot of tensions, and it creates this sort of what I call sliding effect. Right? And you can do this with any resolute chord. Anytime you have some sort of resolute 1 tonic sound, you can slide up or down to that sound with an extremely altered dominant. Now, here's the thing, all right? Here's the fun thing. Theoretically, this is a little harder to understand than it is practically. So with technique-wise, what we're really doing is we're playing a G flat half diminished chord right here. That's it, right? So instead of trying to figure out, okay, I gotta make an A flat dominant 7th chord with a flat 9 and a sharp 5, all you really need to do is play your G flat half diminished chord, but because of the way it's functioning, it's not going to be functioning as a half diminished chord, it's going to be functioning as an altered dominant, and that is what advanced music theory is all about, okay? So we have learned so much up to this point about our 4-note chords, dominant chords, major 7 chords, minor 7 chords, half diminished, fully diminished. That's pretty much all that there is. What remains to be learned is how these things are used and how they are combined in all of these different ways to create the sounds that we know and love. So that's what's happening right here in these slides. We're playing a G flat half diminished chord, which is functioning as an A flat 7 flat 9 sharp 5, and we're using that to slide up onto our 1 chord, which is the D flat. Okay, so that is a very cool little technique. It is a little gray as to whether that is a ragtime technique or a jazz technique or like an early jazz technique, right? But I am composing this in hindsight of the entire saga, right? So I did sprinkle in a few maybe advanced techniques that weren't always used in ragtime, like that slide. And then of course, in this section, we see again, we're gonna have anchor points with descending chromatic lines. So if you just take out those middle notes, you can see that we have octaves playing chromatic lines there. If you have trouble with these anchor tones, I would always say feel free to leave out those middle anchor tones and just play the octaves on the outside. It really won't change the sound that much, or maybe just leave out one of the anchor tones and just play 1 anchor tone instead of 2, right? Make it work for you. The really important thing is the melody, which is the octaves, okay? So we have the anchor tones, we have the slides, and then of course we're just gonna have some of that winding, meandering, almost like Bach, bebop, or in this case, the ragtime line, which is very modal with a little bit of chromaticism sprinkled in. Don't forget about your grace notes. You really just want to like roll your fingers on those, okay? So it's like on the beat, it happens, but it's almost like you messed up, right? Normally you would just play a G, but in this case, you're gonna play 2 notes right before the G, let your fingers do the work. It also happens down here and right here. All right, so those are our harmonies. our form, our techniques, and that's it. That's this whole piece. So, without further ado, let's take a listen to how this sounds on the piano. If you enjoyed today's lesson, you can support the Piano Dojo by finding today's show notes, music, and much more on my website at pianodojo.com, or you can simply subscribe to my channel and share it with anybody else who is looking for answers about the piano. Until next time, happy practicing.